Welcome to another episode of the Transforming Lives podcast panel. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Pankhurst.
And I'm Charmin Prince.
And we are here to solve the problems of the world one episode at a time.
Be sure to smash that subscribe button, review, and download. And don't forget to invite a friend.
Let's go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transforming Lives podcast panel. I'm one of your hosts, Charmin, and we're joined by Cheryl, Mitzi, Kate. We have a full house today, and we also have a special guest whom I'll introduce after our grounding session. Over to you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Charmin, and welcome all you beautiful souls. And thank you for joining us today. As usual, we'll just start today with just a bit of grounding. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, kind of feel your space around you, and just want to be intentional with our gathering today. Chosen to spend some time together. So we put away our distractions and our to-do list and really share our hearts and our conversations together. Let's take one more deep breath, let your day go, and welcome back.
So our guest today is Dollnita, and she's the founder and CEO of Family Life Enhancement, LLC. Donita is a certified parent and marriage coach and a parent educator. She serves as a vendor for the Supreme Court of Virginia. For the past 10 years, Dollnita has taught the court-approved parent education seminar to parents petitioning the court for custody, visitation, or child support. In addition, Dollnita offers a wide range of coaching programs whereby individuals learn evidence-based techniques and strategies, equipping them with practical solutions for healthier family relationships. Specialized areas include parent coaching, co-parent coaching, women's self-discovery coaching, and marriage coaching. Dollnita has also developed a unique and innovative family well-being program and family balance program for companies who are interested in helping their employees balance work and family life. Dollnita is a speaker and author of the newly released book, Distressing the Stressed Out Family. Welcome, Dollnita.
Thank you, Charmin. I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Is there anything you want to share before we dive into questions, Donita?
Well, I have some unique experiences, and I think one of the most unique experiences would be my years of public education. I was a school social worker for 22 years. And recently, like 2 years ago, this month, I retired early from my job so that I could run my business full time. So I'm really excited about that. I'm proud of it because if anyone had ever asked me about 4 or 5 years ago, would I retire early and would I, run a business full time? And I would have said no, not at all. And so I am in this space and I'm really happy, to be here. It's been quite a journey. And again, I'm 2 years in and I love it. I love what I do. Love it.
Thank you for sharing that, Donita.
Yes.
Can you, before we dive into your work,
Mm-hmm.
can you tell us, you went from 22 years public education and then pulled the trigger.
Yes.
What made you pull the trigger?
Wow. So I really, and I've always heard, Cheryl, that, when people leave their jobs or retire or what have you, I've always heard that when it's the right time. And I just sort of let that slide and really didn't pay it, a lot of attention when I heard people say that. But it's true. I knew when we came back as a school system from the pandemic, all of the challenges and experiences that families were having, and particularly our students, it just intensified like 1,000 times more. And the demands were so until I just kind of began thinking, what would life look like if I just stepped away and did what I love to do? And that is, working with families, but more particularly working with parents. And for that length of time working with students, I had like this insight view of how significant the impact is when family life is challenged, when family life is chaotic. And so that in and of itself really propelled me to want to work specifically with parents. And so that was the defining moment for me, just to think that, hey, what I'm doing on the side as my side gig, I could really just do this full time. So I took, in every sense of the word, a leap of faith. I can't describe it any other way. And I took that leap and haven't looked back since. So that's again how I got here. That's my story. And it's been wonderful. Again, if anyone had, said, or if I would have guessed that I would have, left early without full, all the benefits of full retirement, I would have just excused that. That would have been a notion I would not have considered. But that's exactly what I did. So it's been really great.
What were some of the, or can you identify two personal challenges you had to overcome to embrace this new role of being a CEO of your own organization and not having a boss?
Okay. So I think the first fear I had to overcome, or the first challenge, would have been, and really still is, just not really having a business quote unquote mind. I looked at people, admired people who owned their own business, and I just never really considered myself in that particular space. So I was fortunate and blessed enough to enter into an entrepreneurship program after I, went in full time. And it really helped just with the business aspect of it. And, I've also been challenged with really coming up with creative ideas to maintain my business, to actually, again, I guess I'm what you call a solopreneur. It's just me. I'm a company of one. And so I was thinking about that this morning, and everything that is happening in my company, I'm the one that's driving it. I'm the CEO, I'm the project manager, all of that. I wear all those hats. And, I do have a ways to go. I have some goals that I've set not only for the year 2024, but 4 or 5 years down the road. And I know it's going to take hard work and attention to detail, but I fully intend to reach those goals. So I've accomplished, a decent amount, but I have so much more to work towards. So yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We're silent.
Not me. I never have left nothing to say.
Dollnita, I'm wondering what did you find was your biggest challenge when you were first getting started, switching from being the public sector and they obviously supplied your clients and sort of thing, to going out on your own and having to find your own clients? What did you find the most challenging, and what did you find worked the best? What has worked the best for you so far?
Yeah. So I think the most challenging would have been just kind of brainstorming. When I first started, I heard a lot of people talk about, doing a lot of posting on Facebook and running ads and all of those things. And I became very overwhelmed just with the everyday task that I had to do, trying to figure out how I was going to get clients and all of the back office kinds of things that was, really important to maintain. So I really found myself overwhelmed. I did, within my first year of business, I did secure my certification, both of them in the area of women owned business. I am certified as a woman-owned business. And I also sought the certification for a minority-owned business. So those two certifications, took a little while to obtain, but I did obtain them. And that was just, one aspect, again, of running a business. So I think, again, that challenge of finding where my clients were and really kind of niching down what I wanted to do, who I wanted to work with. And it's interesting because I'm still perplexed a little bit with that, because every time I think of something, I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I have such a variety of services because my mind is constantly in motion. It's like sometimes I have a hard time sleeping because those ideas and the thoughts are just coming uncontrollably, really. And so it has kind of propelled me into the various coaching services that I offer. And sometimes I'll think, oh my goodness, how did I get here? How am I doing so many different things? And very quickly, Mitzi, as you asked that question, I'm reminded of a conversation that I had with a former coworker. And she and I worked together for at least 12, 13 years. And so I was in conversation with her just last week. And I was sharing with her that, again, those ideas are always coming. Sometimes I feel like totally overwhelmed. And she told me, she said, you know what? It's probably because all those years you worked for someone else, it really did not free you to kind of come up with, creative ideas. And you were so busy working for someone else. But now you have the liberty, or I have the liberty of thinking out of the box and, just making my business even more versatile and all of that. And so that conversation really helped me to kind of compartmentalize that, because I was feeling a little guilty, why am I doing all this? Why am I in so many different lanes? But her brief comment kind of helped calm those feelings. And, I feel much calmer now that she and I had that conversation. Now, I really, believe exactly what she said. So now I have the liberty. Now I have the freedom to, if I want to launch something, if I want to test something or try something, as it pertains to my business, there's nothing holding me back. So yeah, I would answer it in that way, Mitzi. Thank you for that question. I really liked answering that.
Thank you. That's a great insight. And I think, for a lot of people, that is one of the big things that happens, is that it's that overwhelm. We as
Yes.
entrepreneurs, part of what makes us entrepreneurs is I think we all have a little bit of ADHD in our
Of
brains,
course.
thinking a mile a minute. As somebody who woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning last night and could not get back to sleep, so I just
Yeah.
made myself some notes and got up and just decided to go with it because that was that kind of a night. So
Yeah.
I find that keeping a notepad, my phone, being able to write some notes definitely helps if something just kind of gets in there and won't let go.
Yes, most definitely. I'm working on like 3 mornings straight that my eyes have popped open at 4:30. So when it happens tomorrow, I'm just going to get up. I'm not going to lay there and think, why am I still awake? Why am I awake? I'm just going to get up and just start my day, because those thoughts are like rolling.
Do you have a specific routine that you've set up for yourself that helps keep you organized, or do you just kind of go with the flow of the day, or do you time block? Like, talk a little bit about how you manage your day.
Yeah. So I'm pretty much a girl of routine. I wake up in the morning, get my coffee going. Sometimes I'm putting the sugar and the cream in before it actually finishes. I'll admit that. And I definitely start with prayer and meditation. That's like without fail. That is so important that I seek guidance and instruction. And so I depend on hearing from God. And so that's how I start. And typically, thankfully, I work from home, of course. And so I just come upstairs, plug in the laptop, and I start. And usually I start with emails. And there's some things, of course, it's always left over from like the day before. So I start working on that. And I pretty much, take my little breaks here and there. And I am guilty of working long periods of time. So sometimes it's on into the late evening when I shut my computer down, and I'm thinking, okay, my husband is really, I know he's going to be thinking, when are you closing your laptop? But I try to close it at least between 8 and 9 or so, because I want to wind down and have conversation and have special time with my husband, and read if I want to or what have you before I go to sleep. So that's like the basic routine. And ever so often, I'll be preparing for a presentation or a workshop, and that will, kind of take precedence as well. And then, of course, I have clients. And so, interweaving the appointments in, and I make sure that I'm giving ample time to prepare for my clients as well. So that's important to me. So pretty much my day is like action packed for sure.
What's been the biggest surprise that you've had in working with parents now? So we're sort of working with the other side now. Have there been any things that were really surprising to you, or that you really thought your vision was kind of one way, and then as you kind of got into it, you found that it was completely different?
Yeah. So again, as I mentioned, I've worked 10 years as a parent educator, and did that, on the part-time basis, working with co-parents who are raising their children between two separate homes. And it wasn't until like maybe this aha moment actually came before I stepped out and, to do this full time. But I found that I'm learning even, recently, and I'm surprised at the amount of, I'm trying to put this in the right sense. I'm very surprised that people are stuck in the past. And as I work primarily with co parents, it's becoming more and more evident that it's difficult, sometimes almost impossible, for people to let go of relationships that did not work out, whether they were dating or whether they were married. It's very difficult for them to work through the grieving process and be settled to the point of where they're ready to move forward. And I think that that's been my biggest surprise. I kind of always knew that was a challenge, but I'm really finding it out that more and more, that a lot of times, co-parents are, they become self-absorbed to a degree. And it's not that they intentionally mean to take their attention away from their children. It just happens because they're in this stuck position. And so I love working with co-parents. I find it very, very challenging, but I feel that it's such needed work. And because of my 22 plus years, really it's like it ends up being like 30 some. I'm trying not to age myself, but all of those years of experience working with kids, I just see such a need for children to have the opportunity to have their parents present with them. And I know that going through separation or divorce or breakup is huge. It's a big thing, but children also are a big thing, and so to speak. And they did not ask for, the situations that they find themselves in. And so if I could, like Mitzi, if I could just kind of stand on this mountain, this huge mountain, and let every co-parent that exists know that, heal yourself, make sure you go through the healing process so that you can be there for your children. Your kids need you. So that, yeah, I feel real strongly about that.
That's such a good point. I happened to see just yesterday, so maybe it was because this was coming up, somebody, posted on Facebook, and it showed some videos of, kids at different things like dance recitals and sporting events and things like that.
Yeah.
And you see the kids kind of like looking out in the audience and being sad or whatever. And then the second they see a parent or something, just this enthusiasm and strength and energy that comes from their parent just showing up and being there for them.
Yeah.
How huge that is.
It is. It is.
Donita, hi.
Hi.
You're speaking the language of my heart. My goodness.
Oh, wonderful.
I work in the realm of self-compassion and healing childhood wounding.
Wow.
And your message was there's so many things that I've noted. And what stands out really is I love the mountain that you're standing on. And it's not just for co-parents,
Yeah.
right? It's I think for anyone that brings people, I actually think for anyone that healing our childhood wounding is what
Yes.
ripples around the planet and then
Yes.
allows for us to have a healed planet.
Most definitely.
I just really
Yeah.
want to honor you for your words, and things that stood out for me were, how profound it is. A child is not responsible for their environment, nor do they have the efficacy to make change really in their environment.
Right.
And so how powerless that can be for a child who doesn't
Oh,
feel
most
seen
definitely.
or heard.
Mm-hmm.
And then and I love your shift to working with who can make change in the environment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so important. It's almost like a cliche when we say that our children are our future, but I just feel like it matters so much when children have like carefree childhood. And I know sometimes that's not possible, but it's so much children, witness as young kids. And a lot of times, and I share with parents, not just co-parents, but parents in general, children, they have a tendency to draw conclusions based upon very little experience. So they're drawing these conclusions about life, about families, about adults, and so many other things that they really, they just don't have the tools necessary to make those hard, fast conclusions. And so I've seen children, when family life has changed significantly, it just has such a rippling effect. And I always want to impress upon parents that, this stuff doesn't go away for kids. And even though children may seem like, they're okay with mommy and daddy being divorced, there's so much going on in their little hearts. Their hearts are always churning with thoughts and with ideas and the hope that their families can reunite. And so all of this has such an impact as they grow older. And we won't even talk about teenage years. I mean, that's really interesting all by itself. But when you add on the layers of family, changes and family trauma and family drama and all of that, it really impacts them in such a way that when they grow up and they have relationships of their own, I'm really, kind of concerned about how they're going to navigate through their relationships. And of course, what mother doesn't want her daughter to marry the right man? Or what, mother and father doesn't want their son to be, well versed and if he decides to get married and have children, they want him to be a wholesome man. They want him to be able to take care of his family. So we have to do everything we can while they're young so that, when they get older, they have the tools necessary to make it in life. So I hope that wasn't too long, but yeah, I just kind of wanted to put that out there.
And I see Charmin coming off of mute, and I just have to add one little nugget on there that you shared about, how a child might on the outside look like everything's good. And what really brings me back to is my teacher Gabor says, when a child has to choose between authenticity or attachment, attachment is going to win every single time.
Yes.
So these children who are authentically are upset and are concerned and have big hurts, if that's too much for the parent to be with, right? It's safer for that child to go to everything's okay because that allows them to stay attached to their big person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Awesome.
Thank you for that, Kate. Donita, if a parent is listening to us and they're on the verge or they're separating, they've already separated, what advice would you give to them and their children involved? What would you say to those parents who are listening?
Yeah. I think I'll reiterate the importance of taking time for healing. I believe that in my heart of hearts that sometimes when relationships do not work out, I don't feel that there's a whole time of like regathering or regrouping or reestablishing oneself. And to leave one relationship and then sort of jump very fast into another one doesn't give that individual time enough to sit with themselves and to reflect and to again allow that healing to take place. And sometimes when people skip that process, it makes it really really difficult for them to navigate like the steps of what's coming next. And so I feel that that cooling off period, so to speak, is not only good for the adults but for the children as well. And that would be my advice, to not to rush in to areas of life where you have to, make commitments and be there emotionally for someone when you haven't quite taken the time for yourself. And I'm a strong advocate for self-care and stress management. And I encourage parents, especially those who have experienced breakup and all of that, divorce and separation. I encourage people to really have a self care regimen, learn how to take care of number one. And children are important, and yes, they really are. But if a parent doesn't take care of him or herself, how can they be the best parent, the best mom, the best dad that they can be for, the little ones? So I really, would advocate that and encourage people to take a deep breath, slow down. I like, the grounding session that we had earlier. I'm also a strong advocate of just breathing. Just breathe. When you're going through something, when things are challenging, when you feel overwhelmed, just stop and breathe. And it helps the oxygen kind of flow easily, to our brains, and it just grounds us and it settles us. And I feel that we need that in this busy, fast-paced world that we live in.
I love that. And I love the breath not only centers you, but it allows you to pause before you react.
Oh,
Before
yes.
that pause is so important. But I'd love to dive into your work as co-parenting. And do you have something to say to parents? How do they know? How do they go inside and recognize when they're reacting on their own behalf, or if they're reacting in the best interest of the children when it comes to custody and school and moving and all of the things that are thrown at your kid? I want to know if there are strategies or some way they can sit and go, maybe this is me being pissed off.
Okay. All righty. So, first of all, I encourage my clients to, again, take that deep breath and sort of compartmentalize what they're dealing with. If it is a going back and forth, it really dresses itself up as this is about the children. But if you go down a few layers, sometimes, a lot of times, it's about the adult kinds of things that are going on. And the leftover or the residual anger or bitterness or not really having closure of the relationship. And that becomes the driving force. So, although it on the outside, it appears like, they're talking about the kids or it's about the children's best interest, again, a few layers under, you'll find that this is really about, what happened, whose fault it was, who left who. You know, uh, I have this financial responsibility now. I have to go back to work. I was off for a while, or I didn't work at all. Now I have to work, find a way, to take care of our children. It's just so many different aspects of it, of what we're saying or what we're talking about. And so when a person is able to stop and again compartmentalize, and one thing I do with my clients, I have a slide on a presentation, and I have an image of three baskets, and they all look the same, but one basket represents the father, and the other basket represents the mother, and in the middle, that's representative of the children, and it represents the children. So sometimes when we're discussing specific challenges, I will pull up that image and I'll say, okay, what basket is this really going in? What does this issue, where does it go? Where does it fit? Is this about the kids? And this is going to sound a little interesting. Again, I believe that there's a difference between reacting and responding. And I encourage people to think about responding rather than reacting.
Mm-hmm.
When we react, we're basically coming from an emotional space, and our brains are really kind of telling us, if you can imagine a railroad crossing and the bright red lights are flashing and you hear the whistle of the train, and it's just a lot going on to signify that a train is coming. There's caution. You need to be cautious. Well, when we're faced with things like separation or divorce or the dissolving of a relationship, a lot of times that's what's going on in our brains. It's like the big red flashing lights, something that's signaling that, watch out, she's trying to get over on you. Here he goes again. And that becomes the driving force. And it causes people to react rather than to respond. So I just feel like all of that is important, because for people who are separated and divorced, raising their children between two separate homes, this is a lifetime thing. It's not going to go away. I worked with one young lady years ago, and I believe she was in my class, and she said, my child is 16 and I can't wait till he turns 18 so I could be done with this. And I said, ma'am, excuse me, but you'll never be done with this. You will always be a co-parent. If your child is 33, you're still a co-parent. And I share with parents that, children have this strange way of growing up, for sure. And even as young adults, they still have a need sometimes for their mother and father. Yeah. So
I think what you were saying about, stopping, taking a moment and thinking about that. Are you reacting or are you responding? Because especially, obviously at the point where people are separating, getting a divorce, they've gotten kind of into that turmoil, and there's probably a lot of reacting that is going on.
Yes.
And as you're trying to work through it and make it better for the children, taking that pause and really thinking about responding versus reacting, that's so powerful and insightful. A question for you: can you talk a little bit about what your process is like? Are you meeting with, one spouse, one ex-partner, and then the other one? Are you meeting with both of them at the same time? Are you meeting with them and the kids? Can you talk a little bit more about sort of how that process works?
Yes. So typically I prefer to meet with both co-parents at the same time. I feel like we get more done, we get more accomplished, and both sides can, voice their concerns and their challenges in the co-parenting dynamic, and we get more done. I share with people when I first start working with them that I am a coach. I'm not a referee by profession. I'm a coach. So when I do this on screen, that means, time out. We're disengaging for a second. We're gathering our thoughts. We're settling in and just kind of grounding, because, going at each other is not going to solve anything. And so I'm a firm believer. And again, I've worked with kids, so I kind of know how to bring folks down a little bit and say, hey, we're not doing that. Let's, follow the rules that I have set. And so I think that's important. Now, sometimes if it's a high conflict situation, it may be better for the co-parents to meet with me separately. And I've done that on several occasions. I want my work to be impactful and I want it to bring results. And so if the conflict is just so thick, I'm going to pull back and I'm going to say, hey, let's meet separately. And then as we, as they learn more skills, then we can come together and we can see, and we can set the pace from there. I have worked with children several years ago, and I'm available to work with kids. I share with co-parents, listen, I know kids. I know kids. All the work in the school system. I have three that, my husband and I raised. I know kids. So I have no problem working with children. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm a coach. And I love that because most everyone on the face of this earth who are walking, talking, and breathing, they pretty much know what a coach does. And so for children, it's just an easy concept for them to grasp. And so I love working with kids as well. I love the coaching process or the coaching approach. When I found it, I was like, this is for me. This is what I'm meant to do. And yeah, love it.
Thank you so much. I just want to go back to responding and reacting. And what
Yeah.
I'd love to share as well on that is a really great way to know is where do you feel it in your body?
Mm,
Right? So if there's a tension in your stomach or a
yes.
tightness, and then
Yes.
ask yourself, is this a familiar feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And if
Mm-hmm.
that's a familiar feeling, it's definitely not about what's happening in front of you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, Kate, because not only is this a tool that adults can use, but once they understand the importance of it, they can coach their children through intense moments as well. And again, I think when we as just humans, when we ignore what's going on, not only on the outward, you know, but on the inside of us, when we sort of ignore it or we don't have the tools to deal with it, again, it's so many things, there's so many repercussions of that. And that's where the anger comes in, that's where poor decision making comes in, that's where impulsivity comes in, because we don't know how to manage what's going on inside of us. So if we can teach those tools, especially to our children, and help them. I've not seen a day where we are faced as a society, really, with so many people who are being challenged with anxiety and depression. It just blows me away. And our children are suffering for whatever reason, and there's a lot of reasons, but children as young as, elementary age are being diagnosed with anxiety and depression. What is that? How did we get here? And so again, I believe that a lot of what we're facing can really, start in the home, in family life. And I'm all about helping people gain the tools that are necessary and having a plan. If we as a family don't have a plan, pretty much anything is going to go, and pretty much anything may not be the right thing. So I believe in plans, I believe in establishing a plan. How are we going to get from point A to point B so that we can, live this life and have an overall satisfaction in the midst
Mm-hmm.
of it?
And I love that. And what comes to mind so profoundly is, and I'm sure you're a big believer in self-awareness, and just right when we see point A to point B,
Yeah.
for me, our self-awareness is point A. So if I'm trying to get to point B and I don't even know where I am on this map, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I even know where I'm starting from? And then in
Yes.
conjunction to where I want to go. So I
Yes.
absolutely love that. And I really have to go back as well to when you said about this woman and her, I can't wait till I'm done with this. I just, for our listeners, I really have to share our prefrontal cortex is still developing until
Mm-hmm.
we're like 26 years old.
Yes,
We
yes, yes,
have this
yes.
bizarre idea that kids hit 18 and they have all the answers and know everything. And I mean, we had kids for life. Like we had
Right.
kids for life.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. And really, little self-discovery here. When my kids were, teenagers and on into young adults, I really always had to remember, okay, their brains are not fully developed until like 25, 26. Their brains are not fully, I would just keep repeating that to myself because I'm thinking, okay, how come you can't connect the dots? Well, because their brains are not fully developed until they're 25 or 26. And I think that's huge. And it's amazing. It's wonderful parenting young adults. I mean, I love it. But every so often they'll come to their father or me for guidance, advice. Sometimes we give it without them asking, but that's the joy of parent-child relationships. And it doesn't end. It's always, I mean, when my parents were living, I really cared about what they thought. And not that I did everything that they, said to do, but I really I value that parent-child relationship. And it's just unique. It's, what God gave us. I love it. And so it's important. And this thing of hands-off parenting, when children are in the middle of their teenage years, I don't agree with, no, they need more of your hands on them, so to speak, as they go through their teenage years. I've had, in the school setting, I've had parents that sit down across from me and I'm looking at them across my desk and we're sharing some challenges that the child is going through. And, when a parent says to me, well, I've done pretty much what I can do, and they're 16, they're grown now. This is a teaching moment, ma'am. Just give me a moment and let me break this thing down for you. Yeah, because it's they're not grown as of yet at 16.
Another question, which is, even when parents are together, they can have grown up in very different environments. So you could have one parent who is very easygoing and relaxed, and one parent who is very strict, or they just have different philosophies. And when you're raising your children together, they typically, you try and kind of work and present a united front. And then right at the point where a relationship is splitting, she's running her household the way she wants, and he's running his household the way he wants. And then you get in and you add into the picture, well, if they get additional partners who also have then differing styles. And so now you've got, 4 adults in the mix trying, or 3, in there. How do you deal with some of those types of things? Because as I say, like, I grew up in a home that, there were no rules and there was no guidance and there was no, sitting around having meals. And my husband, was the exact opposite. It was, family meals and very strict and very, so, I mean, we were at complete opposite ends of the spectrum, and it creates challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I think about co-parenting, and that is something that a lot of co-parents struggle with. And during my class, I used this presentation at one particular slide, and it's just very simple. And I'm a visual person, so I love imagery. But on the screen, it'll have a picture of one house, and then it will have a picture of another house, and then it will have an image of children in the middle. And I share with them, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're dealing with. And one home, your home represents your world, and the other home represents the other, parent's world. And so here children are, so to speak, in the middle. And since that is such a challenge for co-parents, typically what I share with them is that when your children are in your world, when in your home, you're being the best co-parent that you can be. You're making it happen for your children. Hopefully you have some rules and expectations. I'm a firm believer in chores and responsibilities and other expectations of your child. And hopefully in the other co-parent's home, that is going on. If it is not, you're being the best co-parent you can be, and your sphere of control is within your home. You cannot control nor make demands on what's going on in the other parent's home. And so to kind of qualify that and keep it, together in your brain, only what you have the control over is what's going on in the activity and the expectation within your home. In a wonderful co-parenting world where the birds are singing and the sun is shining and there's a white picket fence around each home, that would be wonderful, that the expectations in both homes are similar, kind of the same, but in most cases that's not how it is. And so, the world is not going to come to an end. That's my guarantee to folks. It's not going to come to an end if you have two separate rules. The amazing thing about children is that with practice and with an understanding of the expectation, they can get it. They may need some reminders here and there, but they can get it. And so they know what mom expects when they're at her house, and they know what dad expects and what his routine and his rules are when they're with him. And that's the best we can do.
Thank you for that. I think back to, I am divorced. In 2005, I divorced after 20 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And it took me a lot, and I'm very guilty of this, and I'm very aware of this, that I had separated long before I had the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I really had to check myself all the time that I was 10 steps ahead of everybody else in the grieving and loss and recovery process.
Yes.
And I think that's something to really speak about, because, I was probably 5 years in my head. It was done. And then it was, really having to stop and let everybody kind of catch up with me.
Wow.
And I just wonder if you could speak to that, because I still feel it. This was almost 20 years ago, and I still feel it. And I still have this conversation with a lot of co-parents as, you've decided this, but the kids will never decide this. The kids will never choose this, as far as, I'm sure there's, of course there's situations where they would, but in general, the kids would rather you fight and argue and not have any money and not be home or drink or whatever, and still have that central spot. You'll never convince them, but they do have to, we're putting them in a situation where they have to adapt. And so can you speak to that? Can you speak to a strategy or a thought about catching up?
Yeah. So in my class, and even in, the coaching program, we talk specifically about the grieving process. And, a lot of people think that a person only grieves when a person has physically died. So that death is the only reason why a person would grieve. But that's so not true, because we can basically grieve over anything. If we move from one location or one neighborhood or city from another, there is a grieving process. When we switch jobs or there's a change, then there typically is a grieving process. And grieving is real, it's necessary, and it's natural. And so when a relationship is dissolved, when it doesn't make it, when there's a decision to separate, divorce, break up, that's significant. And it is categorized as a significant loss. And so with a significant loss, people are typically, basically always, going to go through a grieving process. What complicates this situation even the more is when one person has worked through, as you've indicated, the grieving process and gone through the 5 stages of grieving. Again, the first is the shock and denial stage. That can be followed by either the depression stage or the anger stage or the bargaining stage. Well, if we get counseling, maybe we can make this work. If I stop going out so much, maybe we can make this work. That's like significant or representative of the bargaining stage. The last stage of grieving is called the acceptance stage. And that's typically when a person has worked through the situation or the process of grieving and has now, kind of said, I'm ready to move forward. Those are the 5 stages of grieving. And so if one individual has gone through those steps and come out on the acceptance side, and maybe the other one could be stuck in anger or stuck in just the shock and the denial of it, it's going to probably cause some friction. It's going to, those 2 individuals are probably going to have a lot of disagreements because they're in 2 different areas of the grieving process. And so then we also have to look at children, and children grieve as well. And they are the ones that stay in the grieving process the longest, without a shadow of a doubt. Children sometimes, especially boys, get stuck in the anger stage. And so, I always encourage parents to make sure you're paying attention to kids. Kids can, if they're being challenged with some stage of grieving, they can pretty much show us better than they can tell us what's going on. But back to the adults. So again, if one parent has, gotten a little stuck in one particular stage, that's going to cause some issues. And then sometimes both co-parents are stuck. Both of them may be stuck in the anger stage. One may be angry, the other one depressed. And so I don't know, maybe people may or may not agree with this, but I always say if a person is stuck in one of those stages, there's a counselor for that. There's a therapist for that. No need to suffer alone. No need to try to navigate through the black hole of depression, of the whole grieving process. Get some help. Get some support. Yeah, there's a therapist out there for that.
I love that. Or a coach.
Yes. Voila. Yes.
There you go. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Any last words? We could probably talk for a week, but we have to pay attention to time.
This was very insightful, and I think you gave a lot of really great tips to get people thinking and taking that pause and trying to look at things from their child's perspective, look at things from their, co-parents' perspective. Don't just see things from their own viewpoint, but look at it from those other angles. And grandparents as well, right? Like and aunts and uncles and all those other relationships all get impacted.
Yes.
And, look at it from all of those aspects as well.
Most definitely.
I love that you took time to explain the grieving process by Kubler-Ross. And you detailed it in such a in bite size where it's digestible and the average person understands that grieving does not have to be death.
Right.
Grieving, it's just any changes in our lives require grieving. And I really think a lot of our listeners can resonate with that. And I think that's really, really helpful when you're talking about separation and divorce and co-parenting and life changes. So thank you for taking time to do that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, thank you to all of these beautiful souls on the screen and all of you who joined us today. Dollnita, we appreciate your expertise and your sharing your conversation with us. And I'm quite sure you will be back, I'm hoping.
Oh, thank you.
We'd love to dive a little more into this work. And I think it's so important. And so thank you all for listening. Transforming Lives Panel Podcast. Thanks for stopping by. Rate, review, share with the people that you know need to hear this. And that's a wrap for the Transforming Lives podcast panel, where we strive to embrace, inspire, and empower our community.
Be sure to subscribe and download. Also, don't forget to leave a review and check the show notes for resources and contacts for all of us. Thank you for listening. And see you next time.
Thank you, Sharman.
Thank you, Cheryl.